far end we have Maroon Najim. He's the co-founder and chief operating officer of Cinewaves, a fast-growing app-based video-on-demand service for and from the Arab world. First launched in Lebanon in 2012.
Exactly.
And you're responsible for scaling and expanding Cinewaves' reach and distribution. We have Gianluca, Chakra, head of local indie heavyweights Front Row Film Entertainment. One of the biggest distributors in the region. Front Row has recently moved towards production with huge success, the first project being the Arabic adaptation of Perfect Strangers, which topped Netflix charts around the entire Middle East earlier this year. And we have Faisal Baltyuor, a local film producer and pioneer. He used to head up the Saudi Film Council, which was the first government agency that was set up since to promote film after the 35-year ban was lifted. And he also founded Saudi's first dedicated art house distribution company, Cinewaves, which has about 2/3 of the films at the Red Sea Film Festival this year. And now you also head up Muvi Studios, the production arm of the local check and play. And to my left, we have Danny Perkins, who founder of the Elysian Film Group, which both production and distribution arms, has CAA on board as an investor. He previously used to head up Studio Canal in the UK and helped bring Paddington Bear to the big screen, something which I would personally forever be grateful. What with Paddington 2 being the greatest film of all time. So I thought we'd start, being in Saudi, looking at the theatrical distribution in the local market. We've obviously seen a huge surge in the box office here. It's now the biggest and most important in the region. And it's only set to grow even more. But a lot seems to be dominated by the big Hollywood titles. How has the indie sector fared in the Saudi cinemas? Gianluca?
It's really hard. Every film is different. So obviously your big indies still kind of work, but priority obviously goes to major studios and eventually local titles when these are available, which is not often. But lately there's been a surge on local content, and that's what's also really driving the box office in Saudi. There's still a lack of that, but the ones that have been distributed, at least coming from Egypt, have been quite significant. Often beating your big blockbusters. So on that side, it's very much healthy. On the indie side, it really depends on the film. The smaller it is, the more word of mouth it needs. We don't have those theaters that could kind of fill that gap. So these often just go after a week, and that's it. So you're gonna have to find different types of revenues, and usually these come from digital. That's that.
Faisal, do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously, it's a
yes, I totally agree with Gianluca. What he has said is fact. But maybe as Gianluca mentioned, that every film is different, and we are dealing here with a different audience. We are still testing. So the cinema just started 2018, and we still learn from each film. So we are collecting data, we are seeing what works, what not. There are a lot of successful films that been out there. There was, we were expecting some films, even some blockbuster films to succeed, but did not. So we still learning. There is a huge gap that is still, available, and we still planning and having some ideas of how to fill that gap, especially from Arab side, and also Saudi perspective. So today, the Saudi box office may be 0.5 or less % out of the whole box office in KSA, which shows that there is a very potential, market if the plans work well in that, field. And Danny, given the hugely upward trajectory of the box office here, and it being one of the few box offices that is going in that direction so dramatically, when you're sort of putting together financials of films, how important is the Middle East for you? Is it a major consideration now when you're looking at films?
I think it's a growing consideration for sure. It's lovely to be here in a growing market, in a confident market where you're building things and things are moving in the right direction. I think coming from one of the older markets in the world, in the UK, it's all doom and gloom and misery and the end of days. It's a treat to be here with some sunshine in December and to be with people who are confidently growing businesses and amongst a festival where there's a sense to build and an openness, and there's lots of great people here. And I think the whole region is really encouraging, I think, to see opportunity and growth rather than what I'm usually looking at day to day.
And Marie, you obviously have a very different model to these three. It'd be great to hear sort of how Cinemas works in this, how that's moved,
Sure.
changed.
So we're more on the streaming and digital side, as was mentioned. I just have one comment. The advantage that streamers have is, as it was mentioned, the data. And when we say data, it's not as you'd expect. When you have data, you don't necessarily know what people want. You know what they don't want. So this is why you're seeing the streamers go more into safer projects, smaller scope, safer projects, more and more, instead of the big, really exciting ones. And the second aspect is, Cinema started as an Arabic-only library, and it did run out of titles at some point. There was not enough production in Arabic for the Arab world to sustain a business there. So we kind of had to pivot. And I'm super excited about what's happening right now in the region. We're seeing more and more people finding that voice to tell a story, and with the backing to potentially produce it and distribute it to that audience.
And Faisal, we've spoken about this before, but the Saudi films, you mentioned earlier, Saudi films have not done hugely well in the box office here. Can you kind of say, why that might be, and what could be done to try and get more people here to watch, locally produced features?
Sure. Honestly, there are several reasons for that. In the local market, Saudi film is just a new brand. We were used to watch Saudi drama. That's a very well known, but a Saudi film is something new. We can say 98 from the public audience, maybe they did not have chance to watch a Saudi film. So we need time to build that brand, the Saudi film overall. If we zoom in more, the commercial cinemas needs, maybe we discussed that before, more commercial films. People go to the cinemas to have fun, to enjoy their time. And the perception of the local market is, okay, we'll go to watch a comedy film, high-end action film. That's the public audience. The amount of artistic Saudi film is higher than commercial film. And for a lot of reasons, because we had no chance to create the commercial films because there was no commercial market in KSA just before 2018. And most of the film and most of the directors were making films to the festivals. So they were doing films for the festivals. There are a lot of successful stories for Saudi films that went internationally and shine internationally. But for now, I think we need to communicate with the audience, understand what they want more. And this also, what happened already with several successful stories of Saudi commercial comedy films that was a big success in KSA, not just today, I think 3 years back, with Book of Sun, with Masamir, with some Saudi films that they were trying to attract the public audience. And this is what actually I think a lot of Saudi producers and production houses, studios are targeting to. So I'm expecting a very successful Saudi films in the next 1 or 2 years to be out in the box office.
And is that what you're doing at Muvi? You're looking to create that kind of more commercial Saudi film?
Definitely, we are trying to fill that gap. We have a lot of data. We know, what Mr. Marwan said, what people do not want to. they were not expecting the commercial cinema. So there are a lot of great artistic festival films that we try to find the right venue for it, but in the commercial cinemas, we are trying to target commercial films that are with the genres that are likable by the audience.
And Gianluca, obviously, having moved into production recently, is the Saudi market quite an attractive one for you to kind of come in and start making films, working with local filmmakers?
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's the goal. Eventually, down the line, we still haven't found, like, at least what we want to do here in Saudi. We've had a few experiences. So it's very much a learning curve still. So, you know, you have more developed markets where, you know, just like Egypt, they've been doing that forever, whereas over here, it's still very new. So to us, it's better to at least in our opinion, to have like co-productions, just because, you know, Saudi could learn a lot from, you know, countries that have already that experience. Yes, we understand there's the money, but the know-how is still not there. It's going to take a while, obviously, and that's with what we want to work on. You know, we'd rather bet on that than just on Saudi content, because Saudi content alone doesn't travel outside of Saudi. Like, even if it's successful over here, people do not relate. So, in our opinion, the best way to do it is to introduce the Saudi culture would be through a culture that already exists. So yeah, that's how we would be looking at it.
And on cinemas, I mean, how have you had Saudi features on there, and kind of what are you guided by what you and your customers want, or are you also trying to introduce them to new things to try and set trends going forward?
Well, we're experimenting, also experimenting with different types of content. The Saudi content has been in great demand. So just to put it in perspective, Cinewaves is an ad-based platform, so we work a lot with advertisers to bring those titles out. And we've managed to do a couple of success stories with sponsored titles going on Cinewaves. So they have, you know, big brands willing to put on some money to have that title drive for a specific territory and in KSA as well. So we've been building on that model. It's not sponsored content per se, but they're sponsoring the release, and it's something also we're looking forward to develop further.
Looking at sort of theatrical, is there any sense that exhibitors need to be doing more to help promote local content and indie content? You know, from what I understand, independents are paid less than studios, so that's not exactly encouraging distributors to put the films in cinemas. You know, and it's the same with local films as well. So they obviously need to give them the financial support and ensure that theatrical distribution. Is that something you've come up against, Jonathan?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, we're independent, so yeah, it's an everyday fight. You know, even if you come up with, you know, a Lord of the Rings, just because it's considered an independent, then you're going to get paid less than, you know, a Godzilla, just because, well, you're independent. So it's a constant fight, you know, but what really is damaging, I think, to the local industry is that local films get paid way less than major studio does, or even a Bollywood title, which again, Bollywood is pretty small considered. But when it comes to local films, yeah, they get paid less. And yeah, it's either, you know, accept those terms or there's a door. It's kind of like that.
I mean, we were going to have Tony from Vox here, but he would have been a good one to talk about that. But yeah. But Faisal, like, you obviously work for, you're a producer and you have a distributor, and you also work for an exhibitor. So how do you kind of sit on that? That fence?
Well, that's everyday question. So it's what we're trying to do is having all of these pillars I think will give me much more zoom out, so I see the challenges in each part, in the producing part, exhibition side, and finding the gaps. So for the exhibitors, for a Muvi, for example, I was working with Muvi since the beginning, as a distributor, as a producer. There was a lot of synergy. There was, like, you know, a lot of common successful stories. For example, we worked together in Book of Sun 2.5 years back almost. we created that successful stories. They were very flexible, they were supporting, and we went through a journey of successful projects and also unsuccessful projects. So where we found the gap that we need to fill, and to and the conversation of the content and the involvement of a movie. The content, it's not just an idea that came just suddenly. It was very strategic from the beginning, and the launch was on the right time, I think. I try to push, like I see the, when it comes to the exhibition, there should be a balance. So the independent or the local films, sometimes they were like, pushing that our film must be in the cinemas for like 8 weeks, for 5 weeks, for 3 weeks, while the business of the cinema, not just in Saudi, anywhere, depending on the performance. So we found that there was a lot of challenges when it comes to, for example, marketing the films. So we still trying to find support from the government, support from some even private sectors to get into supporting the films in the marketing, which is also another gap that we are finding here in KSA.
And Gianluca, you've had, as mentioned before, a huge success with Perfect Strangers. You're someone who obviously wants to get people to come into cinemas and see films, but for this particular film, you went with Netflix. So what was the sort of thought process behind that?
Well, at the beginning, the thought process was to release that theatrically. I mean, that was that's why we partnered up with Empire and Film Clinic at the time. So we're like, let's team up and let's release this theatrically, or let's, at least for us and Empire, it was our first film, so that was the plan. Being distributors, we kind of knew that this would work, and you kind of know what would work. We've been doing this for over 20, 30 years, so. But in this case, it was different in the sense that COVID had hit, so we're all very unsure. At the same time, the subject matter, slowly we started finding out that it was kind of risky. The thing is, again, there's a bit of a double standard in the Middle East, so you could, like the Italian version of Perfect Strangers won like Best Picture at the Cairo International Film Festival, and that was fine. But when the Arab version came out, that was like scandal. Oh my God, what are you doing? Just because it was in Arabic. And the thing is that even when censorship passes a film, and this could have very well passed, if a lot of people complain, you risk getting the film banned after 2 days, and then that's it. So all of your investment is gone. So you really have to take into consideration that, even when we acquire films, like in the past, when we used to, sign whole contract films, we would add a thing called a censorship clause. Because each and every territory in the Middle East, so the whole Middle East doesn't have they don't use the same censorship guidelines. Not there aren't any, by the way, but still they have different perceptions. And so in a lot of places, Kuwait would ban a film that would pass in Saudi, for example. Sometimes Saudi would ban a film that wouldn't pass or that would pass in the, it's very. But in the past, we used to have the advantage of including the censorship clause. Now, for companies like, Danny's and any independent company, they cannot bank any one of these contracts. Because like the Middle East, because of those censorship clauses, it's a contract that's just not bankable. So now they, you're there and you really risk it all by taking a film. Now, okay, obviously there are films that you just wouldn't touch knowing that, that would never pass, but others sometimes you're just surprised. And sometimes, you kind of use the festivals to see if these films will pass or not. And sometimes, they get accepted, but then on its nationwide release, they get banned. It's still very much, but it's going to get there at some point. But
yeah, you think it is?
I hope so. Yeah.
And yeah, Danny, how do you, when there's such a sort of opaque censorship issue, how do you, as Gianluca said, how do you bank on a film? How do you say, does it make life tricky?
We physically can't bank on it. I was just thinking about my lawyer when you're making the answer. I'll be able to pass that on. It's difficult because, pre-sales you have to bank this out, and a percentage of what's been committed to a film goes towards its budget. With the censorship thing, it's not bankable. So Yeah, there's lots of conversations about that on our side, but it's nice to hear it from this side. I think to pick up the point about independent film is really interesting at the moment. It's a challenge in the UK, it's a challenge everywhere, and I think that cinemas have to encourage the independents because they have to encourage people who take risks and make original stories and bring original stories and local stories to the screen. Because the studios are amazing in what they do and they bring lots of audiences to films all around the world, but by the amounts of money that they're committing, if you're making a film for $200, $300 million, the obvious thing to do is to do a sequel or work on something that's worked before. And so the amount of risk that's taken is much lower. And ultimately, you know, the audiences could get bored if every film is a sequel or something they've seen before. And so I think it's important that as an industry, and it's an interesting challenge that we have in every territory, that the industries need to look after the independents and at least give them a level playing field or opportunities to do things that are different and take risks and maybe have more of a local blend to them, so that we create an offering for audiences that is diverse and different and engaging, because at some point everyone's going to get bored of superheroes and then we'll all have a big problem, I think, in the theatrical world.
Sorry, Alex. I mean, what Perfect Strangers did, though, when we decided to go to Netflix, it kind of, again, like, you know, Middle Eastern cinema is very much formulaic. So yes, this was a remake, absolutely, but it was like the first time that they see something like that over here, just because a lot of the topics that are depicted in that film are quite sensitive for the region. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air, and thank God for Netflix, honestly, just because, you know, they were able to introduce that kind of cinema, but at the same time create a demand for it. So now it's like a lot of people are like, okay, so when are you guys doing your next film? Because it's like, all right, so you guys touch these kind of films, then it's like, what are you guys doing next? So it's very exciting, but at the same time, you know, you want to use these kind of success stories to use these locally and try to, you know, encourage also the cinema. So it's not that we're, you know, every film is going to go to a global streamer, obviously, but, you know, kind of develop that. And I think it's the right way to do it, or I think it's going to get there.
Well, you're working on another adaptation, I'm not going to pronounce it correctly, into Chakra.
Yeah,
yeah, which is
we were supposed to start shooting in November, then now I can't read this film, but yeah.
But you're setting that in Egypt, and obviously with Egypt being such a, you know, the Hollywood of the Middle East, would that be a film that you would probably more likely take to cinemas?
Yeah, there's that possibility. Obviously, okay, let's shoot it first, but yeah, absolutely. You know, that is the plan. But let's see. You never know.
And Maroon, you've like moved into like original productions, I understand. So what's your sort of tactic there? Are you able to sort of, again, tap into the data that you have and see what people want, or how does that work?
Yeah, definitely. So we combine an experience of roughly 10 years of viewership across the whole, North Africa, Levant, and GCC. And this is where we came in. We're talking about, you'd be surprised what people want to watch, what gets censored, etc. And there's a lot of unexpected results we've seen. This is why we like to say we don't necessarily know what people want, but we know what they don't want, to go back to that. And we're building on that to work also with the global streamers. But the angle is different. The angle is we want to create content from a regional talent, but for a global audience. So we're not necessarily, what Cinewaves does on the development front is for a global audience. It doesn't have to be in Arabic, but usually the talent attached to it tends to be from the region, be it the writers and the team. And it's been, so we have a couple of projects in the works, not released yet, super looking forward to that.
And would you even consider sort of, like what Muvi are doing and actually releasing films theatrically as well?
What Muvi is doing is great, and to go back to the global streamers, I think the changes they have introduced are great. It's been very positive for everybody in terms of developing the industry. I am a bit concerned about how much leverage and power they are accumulating in the tail of content. It's a good thing in general, but we're going to have less and less independents who's going to be able to have their voices heard. So as an industry, the naive side of us dreams of this decentralized theater that would allow, to go back to movie, that will allow independent filmmakers to be able to control the process from A to Z, like when the movie is being released, how it's being watched. I think the technology is going there in the sense of delivery is a commodity, but displays, headsets are going there. You're kind of starting to have the experience, the theatrical experience at home. And we're also super excited about that, especially the model of decentralized theater in these controlling the solutions directly.
Looking at the impact of the big streams in the region, not even a year ago, before Disney Plus launched out here, there seemed to be a huge amount of optimism and expectation that you've got Netflix that are doing well, doing their thing, but the others would start pumping money in and doing a lot of original productions, giving local filmmakers a lot more opportunities to not just get their films made but get them out across the world. But Disney Plus seems to have stuttered a little bit out here, and Amazon Prime haven't yet kind of moved into gear. We're not sure what's happening with HBO Max and if and when it will ever launch. Is that optimism still there? Faisal, as a producer, were these opportunities the ones that you were considering that you're now perhaps sort of taking a step back from?
The streamers, I think it will be a very beneficial aspect, especially in KSA, because it will help in introducing local content to a much bigger audience. So with the accessibility that that Netflix, for example, and the other streamers have, especially in KSA, this will, and we have seen some examples. There are films Saudi films that have been either originally produced or acquired that was in the top 10 most watched films in the region, we can say in KSA. This shows the demand of the local content, and this introduces the local content to a much bigger audience that might attract them later on to buy a ticket and go and watch Saudi film. And this takes us back to building the Saudi film brand. And I think it will be a very big added value. And I really like the idea of having some, like Netflix and some streamers films to be out in the cinemas for a period, then goes to directly to the platform, because it gives the option to the experience. As we know, the cinema is more of experience, and it's not only just a story that we watch in the TV. So, and I have seen some Netflix originals that was fully booked in the cinemas while it's available on Netflix. So this shows that even the local audience, they want to watch the film with the best quality possible, with the best techniques that are set for the film.
And Gianluca, what are your thoughts about, you obviously worked with Netflix very successfully, but what are your thoughts about the other big name Hollywood streamers coming in? Do you have any?
I think it's great. In a sense, it just creates a lot more competition. You strive for excellence, I would think. It's that. It's just about having, the theaters keep up with the expansion of all of these platforms, which, is a threat. It really is. Let's face it. It's that. A lot more producers are going direct to streamers just because it's a lot simpler. It really is that. You get your film financed, it gets released, and if it's good, you get to do another film, and it's kind of that. Whereas like with cinema, it's a lot slower. So no, I think it's great. I honestly think it's great for people that are here to create content and new IPs. I think it's an opportunity that 5-10 years ago we just never had. We never thought of getting into production at all. I don't know about Faisal, but for me it was like a no-go. I didn't even think about it. But now it's like, well, okay, let's give it a shot. We know what could work here. It's our job. Let's do it ourselves. So yeah, no, I think it's a good thing, especially for producers and content owners. I think it's great.
And do you think that, you know, the Disney Pluses, the Amazon Primes, are they going to step up? Are we going to see a lot more action from them in the region?
I mean, eventually, yeah, like the rest of the world, yeah. So, no questions asked. It's that,
Just,
you know, in
just
order
matter
to,
of time.
yeah, you know, in order to increase your subscriptions, you know, you reach a plateau when there's just, you know, Western films. But, you know, once you create local content, this is what, you know, people are looking for, especially, you know, or like in the Middle East or places like Italy, Spain. Like you see the numbers just shoot up once you have, you know, local content, and it's going to be the same over here.
And what does that mean for you at cinemas? I mean, is that kind of competition, or, I mean, how do you view this?
Not really. I mean, we're on the free tier. We don't see these players as competition per se. We're more theatrical, so it's different kind of it's a different window, different content, and in some cases those platforms were advertising on cinemas itself. So we see this as a big one. We're also excited about the implosion of more players entering the space. That's more ad revenue for us.
And given that we're here sort of at the Red Sea Film Festival, it would be great to discuss, you know, the impact. You touched on it before, Gianluca, but the impact of festivals like this on films and how it can, you know, affect your theatrical strategy, what you do with the film. So, Faisal, you've got a number of films here. How does Red Sea help, you know, you shape your plans for those films?
Of course, the festivals overall will, will be an added value to most of the films that are targeting either the theaters or any other platform. For us here, the festival is a verification for the film. If it's, because it's not being selected just randomly. There was a big, experienced programmers that watched hundreds of films and selected that film. So this will give it a huge buzz. There are several, elements that support the films from the PR perspective and from the recognition of the filmmakers that will support them to do more and more. I can see, like last year, there are some films that have been screened that gave especially the young filmmakers, a lot of support and shed the light on their films and their success and their stories. I think it's a very supportive, platform to. If I'm going to focus on the local films, because the amount of PR that is around the Red Sea is huge. For any film to be premiered, even some of our films, we plan that we premiere the film in the Red Sea. Then we go to either the round of the other film festivals, or if it's a purely commercial, we go to the cinema after premiering the film just 1 month or 2 months after that. And this is very supportive to the film from all aspects, actually.
And Gianluca, obviously you've got a lot of films here. I mean, how does a festival like this sort of work as a launchpad for your titles?
When it comes to Saudi, I still think there's a lot to be done. I mean, we have 8 films at the festival right now, and it's Danny would know. I mean, it's a circle. Like, you have the press, you need the support of the press, you need the support of the media, you need support of the institutions, you need the support of the schools, and so on. Like you see, Berlin, Cannes, the way they work and so on, and literally create a hub, a culture. Over here, it's their 2nd year, so it's going to get there. Dubai, unfortunately, didn't get there. We're hoping this one is it's time to have a real festival. So I think, yeah.
But I think this is one thing.
Is it a launch pad for our films?
Yeah.
It's still not there. I know, honestly, it's still not there. We'll obviously support it, but it's still not there. Like, it's not, it's not like you have, premiering a film at the Red Sea Film Festival, not an Arab film, obviously, but, Triangle of Sadness, Rebel, like these kind of films. they still don't have that impact over here of them premiering in a Cannes or even screening in a Toronto, where you have like a whole community that's like, oh, that's the Cannes Film Festival winner. That you still don't have that over here, so it's going to take time.
And sort of tapping into a subject we were talking about previously, but is there the guarantee that if a film screens here, it's actually going to hit cinemas?
Unfortunately, we don't have that guarantee, which is counterproductive. You know, you want to push the film to, you know, through a film festival, but then sometimes it's and you'd think that you could push the envelope out, but then, like, you know, you deal with a completely different authority that then has like they can ban the film, and just that's it, you know, and which is, you know, it's just counterproductive to the film festival. And then tomorrow, like, the producers or even distributors would kind of think twice. It's like, well, do I want to premiere a film that's eventually not going to be released in theaters? Why? It's that, you know. But you think that slowly, by premiering these titles, you slowly start shifting that point of view, and then eventually things will get better.
I'd like to see if there's any questions from the audience at all for this panel.
صوتي عالي. شكرا كثير للمعلومات، رح احكي بالعربي. للمعلومات اللي حكيتوها بدي اسال سؤال فيصل وجانلوكا اساتذه حفظ الالقاب. انا بدي اسال عن الجمهور السعودي. كلنا شايفين قديش في دعم للسينما السعوديه، وقديش في مواضيع مختلفه، وفي شباب تالنتد رائعين عمالهم بيطلعوا هيك. بس انا بدي اسال عن الجمهور السعودي، هل الجمهور السعودي بيحب يحضر الافلام السعوديه؟ يعني تضحك لاني انا تقريبا سالته، وبدي اسال ليش، هل في دراسات بتجري ليش السعوديين مش كثير بيحضروا افلامهم بالسينما؟ لانه شفت افلام كويسه الحقيقه، شفت بمالمو فيلم كثير كويس. بعدين لما سالت قديش انعرض لقيت انه ما كانش في اقبال للاسف. في حين انه افلام مصريه البادجت تبعها كثير صغير حققت ملايين هون، مثل ماما حامل ووقفه رجاله، وافلام مستواها كثير بسيط بصراحه يعني. فبدي افهم الموضوع هذا، يعني اكيد انتم بتعملوا دراسات نفهم ايش السبب. شكرا.
طيب اجاوبك بالعربي. Can I answer
كورس في ترجمه.
طبعا احد اكبر المشاكل، يعني انت ركزتي على نقطه هي من احد اكبر مشاكل ان احنا جالسين نواجهها، اللي هي الجمهور. دائما نقول الجمهور الجمهور الجمهور، لانه اي فيلم سعودي ما هو متوقع، يعني فني بحت، يروح للجمهور وإحنا نعمل ماركتينج كبير عليه ويجون وما يكونوا متوقعين هذا الفيلم. يكون في تحدي مرة كبير في انهم يرجعوا يشوفوا فيلم سعودي ثاني، بتكون تبدا الانطباعات، وهذه الانطباعات تكون هي انطباعات شويه مؤثره. ليه؟ لانها ما هو فيلم من 100 فيلم هم شافوه، هو فيلم يعتبر من الافلام اللي هي تكون فيرست امبريشنز. فهي النقطه الهامه الفتره هذه، السنوات الخمسه الاولى هي سنوات مهمه جدا في ان نحدد هويه الفيلم ونفرق ونضع الفيلم في مكانه الخاص. فيلم معمول بشكل فني رائع، بشكل يعني يحاكي جمهور يعني يرغب انه يشوف فيلم فني. ممكن المهرجان هو مكان رئيسي وليس المكان الوحيد بالتاكيد، هو المكان الاول والرئيسي له. بعدها ممكن يكون في عروض خاصه لهذا الفيلم. الفيلم التجاري او الجونرز اللي يتابعوها يعني او يحبونها الجمهور بشكل عام، هذه تكون موجوده بالسينمات بشكل، وهذه جزء من الافلام اللي نجحت، اللي نشوف انها نجحت. الجمهور السعودي هل هو يحب الفيلم السعودي؟ احنا نرجع نقول هل الجمهور السعودي يحب الكونتنت السعودي بشكل عام؟ نشيك على اليوتيوب ونشوف. اظن اليوتيوب هو مثال واضح جدا، بس هذا ما كان من اليوم الاول، هذا كان بناء كانت مدته 13-14 سنه. فأنا ما أقول أن نحتاج هذا العدد من السنوات عشان نبني شيء هذا، لكن نحتاج نجاحات متراكمة لأفلام سعودية تبني هوية الفيلم السعودي بشكل عام، أنه فيلم يكون معمول بإمكانيات ممتازة، الحبكة فيه ممتازة، بناء الشخصيات ممتاز. أيضا فيه نجوم، مع الوقت يكون عندنا نجوم شباك تذاكر. كثير من اللي يروحون السينما ما يعرفون عن القصة، هم رايحين للأبطال اللي يشوفونهم واللي كان عندهم تراكمات، وهذا اللي ياخذنا الأفلام المصرية. الأفلام المصرية تربينا احنا نشوف الأفلام المصرية من صغرنا، فنعرفهم ممثل، نعرف إنه هذا كوميدي، هذا في الدراما ممتاز. فأنا حسب الجونر اللي أنا أبغاه لما أشوف الممثل في البوستر وأعرف إنه موجود. وجزء كبير أيضا الجمهور السعودي فيه عنده ثقافة جيدة، يعرف حتى المخرج. فأحيانا ما يهمه الممثل، المخرج معروف بالنسبة له فيروح يشوف الفيلم. وهذا يصير حتى في الأفلام الأجنبية مش بس في العربية. فأظن هي مسألة وقت ومسألة بناء قصص نجاح. إن شاء الله نوصل للمرحلة هذه ونشوف جمهور أكبر.
شكرا.
لا يعرف العربي طبعا
قول بالإنجليزي. Don't worry.
شو بقولوا العرب؟
Go ahead. Don't worry.
No, I don't think Saudis like Saudi cinema so far. I mean, talking to a lot of people, even high up, it's a learning curve. You know, you can't expect Ben-Hur from day one. Like, it's not gonna happen. So it's, yes, you see the films that are pretty good, the ones that end up in film festivals, and they do the rounds of film festival. And I think these are the films that are going to shape the industry over here. You are going to have the more commercial ones for sure, but like Faisal said, there is no star system at all. You know, from a director to an actor to a writer. We struggle so much to find writers across all of the Middle East. So just imagine even Saudi. It's very new, you know. So it's going to take a while. It's going to take quite a while, you know. And again, that's why I really think there's a lot to learn from our other Arab countries that could contribute to shaping this industry, you know, over here. And I think there is a lot to do. So it's about collaboration, being humble, I guess.
Thank you.
Hi. I'm Merfat Abou. I'm not a filmmaker, I'm an educator in the film industry. And the question, hi Luca, the question again would be just to follow up to what Bilal has just said. Do you think to what extent mainstream platforms like Netflix and Shahid and Now Watch It would help to cultivate this culture of watching Saudi films? I agree, I'm an Egyptian and I take pride that the history is really enormous, and I love, the fact is that Saudi Arabs would understand the jokes, would understand what we call afashat, or this colloquial expressions in our Egyptian movies, and it's not otherwise. So sometimes we don't even get the language. So I mean, this culture, do you think platforms of the sort that now you can visit, it visits you at home, so you wouldn't really go into a movie theater to watch the movie, but perhaps this would enhance this kind of speeding up the culture of getting acquainted?
That's what I was saying, like, it's like the streamers help that, you know. In the past, like, we didn't used to see, like, foreign films. It was rare, like, you know, once every 2-3 films. Like, forget Egyptian cinema, but I'm just talking in general. You know, you had like films like, I don't know, Il Postino, Life is Beautiful, like these kind of films that would come out and it would be like once every 10 years, right? Now it's like you get to see them on platforms more and more. People get to see your Squid Games, something that would never have, no one would have ever imagined in the past. The same thing I believe is going to happen with Saudi cinema, slowly but surely. But then again, platforms, yes, they're looking first and foremost for audiences within a country like Saudi Arabia, so they will choose a title that would work locally over here. This is again based on our experience and what we know. But
to what extent you're making the audience aware of the fact that it's there, just watch it, just as a step. And it's the other way around. It's not like, of course, mainstream platforms would streaming platforms would help. So I mean, to what extent the audience is aware that this is an approach for them to watch? Is there any campaigns, anything that just tells them they're there, just watch?
Yeah, I mean, I know that at least like the big streamers, they promote these, so it's that, you know. And obviously, if the film is good and has that reputation that usually is built throughout film festivals, then people will watch it. If it's just dropped there, it's like, hey, go look at that Saudi film. It's not enough. And again, there's not enough product still to sort of point at go watch that film. There's not enough. So it's going to get there, but it's
I'm sure.
still.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. As a producer now, as a Saudi producer, I think my takeaway from this session is don't produce Saudi films yet. Or sell it to, I'll just continue. Or sell it to a platform. It's the easy way out. I mean, as distributors, and I'm addressing this, to Gianluca and Faisal, who both have worked with before. So we do have a case that a great Saudi films made great in box office. But when you look into the way it was distributed, or let's say, where's the P&A in the Saudi films? There's a Saudi film will be coming out next week. Until today, there isn't one single trailer in any exhibitor showing that there's a film coming out. There are Saudi films were released and taken out of theaters, and we were wondering, was it released yet? So there isn't any P&A investment coming from distribution, which is a worldwide formula, like last in, first out, and we'd like to know more about how could that happen. Plus, the two successful movies that made it actually had its own audience on YouTube. So the producers and the filmmakers of those movies actually took advantage of their great platform appearance and audience, which actually made it successful. So when can we see an actual true P&A investment 6 months ahead of the release of the film to actually promote that there's a Saudi film coming out? Thank you.
A good film to spend that P&A.
Then distribute it if it's not good. You're
Well,
distributing
sometimes-
it, but you're not spending in P&A, and
But
then
why
it's
would you
out.
spend the P&A knowing that the film is not going to
Then
work?
don't distribute it.
Well, that's why we don't. Like a lot of people don't. That's it's a choice. The thing is that a lot of the Saudi films right now like gain their notoriety on once they hit SVOD platforms or television. Like this is where people start noticing Saudi films. When it comes, there is still that skepticism when it comes to Saudi cinema from Saudis, regardless of whether you spend $1 million, $2, $10, $20 million just promoting the film. Like you're throwing that money away if the film is not good. It doesn't matter how much you're going to promote it. It's really that.
Exactly. You tapped in a point, which is the marketing and P&A. That I just was talking about it, which was in one of the gaps. This doesn't mean that there was no films there was dedicated P&A that's bent on that. A lot of films that there was a P&A that's being spent until today for like a year, until today did not recoup the P&A. So it's a very, when you go on the ground, it's not as we look at it from from the top. No, when you go on ground, there are a lot of expenses to get the film into the screens. There was a Saudi film that been promoted 2 months or 3 months as a trailers in the cinemas, even before a very big blockbuster film. But we still have this challenge, the challenge of having the audience. What we need is to produce more Saudi films, to understand our audience, and just wait. Because building an industry, we just go to Korea, as we know, everyone knows what are the successes, but they did not start it 2-3 years ago. They started in the 70s. And there was successful failure stories. And I was just asking one of their leaders who started in the 70s, and I asked them a very valid, very important question, which is, when do you think you say, we have a Korean cinema? They started in the 70s, but he said we have a Korean cinema just only 10 years ago. So it took them time to build, while Korea has a lot of elements that is supporting. But now, as you see, it's a set. It's one of the biggest shining. So I think we need to have these, unsuccessful stories build us more and more. That's why we need to think about having a slate, not just having a film and then stop. Having like 3, 4, 5 films, and this is what big studios also does for 100 years. So a percentage of the film doesn't fly, and some of them just recoup all of the slate money. So there is, and we'll keep continue producing Saudi films. So we are not against that.
I believe we have one last question over here.
Yeah, I think the first step of, you're saying you're addressing good films. I think the first step for cultivating merit with Saudi filmmakers is to emancipate their creativity. Because I think that Saudi filmmakers are at the mercy of the conditions of film funds and distributors. I run a screenwriting lab, and I'm one of the very few who does a screenwriting lab in Arabic, and like instead of from, and so I understand the culture and everything. And I have 6 IPs, and every time I come to a festival and I try to sell these IPs, they ask me, is the director a girl? Is the protagonist a girl? Is, you know what I mean? Or they ask me, you know, your movies are too local. The rest of the Arab world are not going to get it. Or, you know, like all these type of conditions, which kind of make us kind of like in a contrived way not be authentic with our creativity and try to like serve agendas and try to, you know what I mean? It's not that I'm against any of these things, but like I just think we should have like the trajectory of the filmmakers' careers in Saudi Arabia has to be organic, natural, authentic, and we shouldn't like put too many conditions of what kind of content we're looking for over their heads. And I think that's the real path towards cultivating merit and good films. Even if it doesn't, if it misses the first few times, at least it's going in the right direction, as opposed to a contrived direction.
Well, maybe that's very specific, you know, conditions. I never faced it, honestly. I worked in a lot of films. I never faced it. I'm not saying this not is happening, of course. This is a very, like, you know, we can say public things that is going around. However, like, for example, the government funds, like vote, for example, film competition by the Film Commission, they never asked about these questions. They produced and they supported more than 30, 35 films. Some of them are premiering here. And this is among many others that even the Red Sea Film Festival is also supporting from Arab and Saudi films. Maybe there were, like each, either a private entity that supports films, maybe some of them, they have their own agenda, they have their own, you know, target. So that's why they're asking that question, but there are a lot of, you know, funding resources and supporters that even they don't get involved in the script entirely from artistic perspective, and they know that a lot of films that been screened and funded fully without even going through even script reading or proof reading from the funder themselves or from the investors. So they trust, a lot of them, they do trust the writers, they do trust the directors, but there are, as maybe you have mentioned, there are some independent things that maybe sometimes happen, and this is actually from lack of experience, I can say it. It's not from, you know, and it's because no one, I don't see this logical at all.
Thank you.
Phil McKenzie from Content Government. I just had a question around the audience. Do you guys think there's a challenge, an opportunity, around the kind of older generation and the younger generation within the region?
What's the question? Sorry, I don't understand the question.
As in, do you think there's opportunity there that maybe the younger generation's underserved by the content that's out there at the moment, the films that are being produced, or vice versa?
I would say one thing from a streamer's perspective. Getting people to commit to a long format is getting more and more difficult. because it's so accessible, we no longer give the time to sit down and enjoy that movie, right? Versus like the theater experience. So we've been struggling a lot and having to reinvent ourselves continuously to keep that commitment aspect for movies. That's specific for movies, not for art movies. So no, it's very difficult to get the younger audience to watch real cinema, I have to say.
I think that's all we've got time for now, but thanks very much for coming, and thanks to the panel, Maroon, Gianluca, Faisal and Danny. Thanks very much.
Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to pull you to the side and take a picture quick, a group picture. And thank you, everyone. We're going to take a break for lunch. We'll be back this afternoon. We're going to have 2 more sessions this afternoon, script to screen, and then a keynote from Michael Uslan, who's the producer of Batman, The Joker, Lego movies. And so we hope you come back and join us. Thank you.